everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Women Serve 2. Today we have Shannon Hough with us. She is the CEO and founder of Shields of Sisters. She is a lady veteran of the Navy, a military wife and mother. Shannon has also served as a mayor, congressional staff member, and a city administrator. Shannon holds an MPA and MBA from Norwich University. She has endured sexual assault in the Navy over 25 years ago and never fully recovered from what happened to her. While Shannon was serving as a congressional staffer, she encountered several service members who needed help with their own sexual assaults while serving in the military. She decided to create Shields of Sisters as a way to help her sisters that endured military sexual trauma. Shannon's passion is helping others find restoration and supporting her sister service members. She's an avid reader, loves to cook, and spends time with her family, including her dog Zeus. So Shannon, thank you so much for being here today. I'm really excited to discuss Shield of Sisters, and especially with this political climate. But first, I want to kind of talk about your own military experience. Why did you join? Because I'm Air Force, so Air Force the best force. So why did you choose Navy? And just kind of tell us a little bit about your military journey.
Well, thanks for having me first. I appreciate it. I love doing the chats, especially when it's women. You know, we just have a different connection. So thank you for that. I joined in 1992. I grew up in Fort Knox, Kentucky, and so was not going to join the Army. That just wasn't going to happen. I'd seen too many recruits go through and no. And my stepdad was Navy. My father was Army. And the day we went to the recruiter station, the only one that was in was Navy. So there you go. And at the time, the slogan was join the Navy, see the world. And I was in Virginia the whole time. So they lied.
Fair.
Going from Kentucky to Virginia was not the way to go. But I joined just out of a sense of duty. It was right as the Gulf War was going on, the first Gulf War. I joined my junior year, had to finish my senior year of high school. And so spent my whole senior year going, what did I do? What did I do? What did I do here? Oh my gosh, I don't know if I want to do this. Yes, I'm going to do this. And then turned 18, graduated high school, and went to boot camp in Orlando, Florida, all within 2 weeks. So it was quite an adventure.
I could only imagine.
Yeah.
So you joined in 92. You went to Orlando. What was your job in the Navy?
I was a cryptologic tech. So I did intel. I was assigned to a submarine unit. So I had an extremely high security clearance, which actually plays into my sexual assault story. And it was an amazing job. I did a lot of crazy stuff. You know, you walk into this office, the first door, you put your badge in. The second door, you scan your finger. And the third door, they scanned my retina. So,
wow.
Yeah, I did some pretty crazy stuff.
My intel job was not like that. I just had a badge and just went in.
And,
so that's cool.
Yeah. And that was just to get in my office, to get in the building. The Marines went through my purse every day, made sure, because our building was famous for traitor spy who was giving away secrets at lunch, and he'd walk out with information in his briefcase and send it to Russia. So the security was just insane. And the Marines always liked to mess with me. So I started just putting crazy stuff in my purse just to mess with them back. And it became quite a joke as to what was going to be in Thomas's, that was my name, Thomas's purse that week. So we pull jokes on each other. That's how the military works. So I got very good at putting things in my purse. One time I think I put like a fake dead fish in there. They're just like, really? I'm like, oh yeah, we're going to play. If you're going to search my purse every time, we're going to have some fun. So
might as well. It keeps the day interesting. That's for sure.
It does. Especially when you're going in at 5:30 in the morning and know you have a 12-hour shift ahead of you.
Yeah, those 12-hour shifts were always so brutal. And because they were never 12 hours, they ended up being like 13 because you had to get there for the pre-brief and then the debrief. It's very long days. As cool as intel sounds on paper, I just know with me, we were looking at compounds with little to no movement for months. And then, but when things hit off, it went real quick. And so those were exciting. But yeah, we could easily make intel sound very, very interesting.
Well, it's crazy. Just even getting the job, the amount of people they talk to about your background. Like they talked to my kindergarten teacher. I'm like, because they go back, 20 years? I wasn't even 20. Like, who were you going to talk to God? It's like, but when you go back and say, oh, I was a spy or so, kind of play it up even more, people are like, oh, that was really cool. I'm like, no, actually, most of the time it was boring, because the war was over and Yeah. So, but working in the submarine field, we were still playing around with the Soviet Union. It was still the Soviet Union. That's how old I am. I was actually on duty when the coup happened and Soviet Union fell. And it was really wild watching because of course, we saw it all first. I'm like, this could be an interesting news cycle. And sure enough, go home that night and watch it on the news. I'm like, yeah, I already. So the news was boring for me.
It's fair. It was very similar. Yeah.
Yeah.
How long did you serve?
I did 5.5 years. I would have done longer, but just emotionally and physically just was done.
So, speaking of which, because we are talking about military sexual trauma, did you want to kind of explain your story and why you created Shield of Sisters?
Absolutely. And I'm just going to preface this with it could be triggering for some people. So, if that's the case, please reach out for help after you listen. Right after I got to my first duty station, I was young, single, having fun, in all the guys. And I walked to work every day. I lived in barracks because I was single E1, and this MP kept stopping me and talking to me, just kind of slowly building up to asking me out. And I finally agreed, and on our very first date, he said, I'm an E6, and that's fraternization. If you don't continue to go out with me and do what I say, I'm going to get you in a lot of trouble, and you have a big security clearance. And I was like, okay. And at first it didn't click with me. I'm young and stupid. I'm like, okay, yeah, we're on a date. Well, a few days later after our first date, he asked me out again. I was like, no, I think I don't want to be dating one person. I just want to see what it's like. I wasn't allowed to date a lot in high school because I was a very strict family, very Christian, religious family. And he's like, no, you're going to go out with me. You're stuck. So it became a very coercive, quote unquote, relationship. About the fifth or sixth date, he started pressuring me um, for sex, and he was like, "If you don't, gonna get you in trouble." And so this went on for months, and I started losing weight. I would get to work late, and just anything and everything. I was drinking. I was 18, not supposed to do that. And my command, without trying to figure out what was actually going on with me, just labeled me as a shitty sailor. And so the coercion to have sex with him continued and continued. And, I was just spiraling. And finally, the last time we were in my barracks room, he could get into the barracks because he was an MP. My roommate walked in, and she immediately turned around and left. And I was freaking out. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to get in trouble. And she comes back with the chief of the police unit. And he takes me out of the room and puts my assaulter in handcuffs. And I'm like, this isn't right. What the heck? And they turn around and tell me that I need to go to the hospital, that he was only on our installation because he had HIV. And, when you join the military, you're tested for everything imaginable. We're clean. We don't have any diseases. Having grown up in the 80s, HIV was a death sentence. It was horrible. And so going to the hospital, having rape kits done, I still have track marks in my arms from the number of times I've done HIV tests because I've just been so terrified. 30 years later, still don't have it. Will never have it. But living in that fear for 30 years was extremely detrimental to me. I got in trouble with my command, one, for dating an E6, two, he was married, and I didn't know. There was a court martial. He went to the brig for 6 months for having an affair, not for assaulting me, not for attempted murder, nothing related to the HIV, which in the civilian world, if you knowingly have something like HIV or an extremely dangerous STD or anything like that, you actually get attempted murder and assault as charges. The military doesn't see it that way. And so I spent the next 30 years, alcohol. I attempted suicide 3 times unsuccessfully, thank God. I was just a mess. I binge eat, everything possible. No one outside of my command knew what happened. On the outside, I was very well put together. I've been a mayor. I've been a congressional staffer, a lobbyist. I've done a lot of things. Married to a colonel, just very well put together. But on the inside, I was a mess and couldn't really put my finger on it. I knew that I had had a sexual relationship with someone that was a coercive relationship. But it wasn't until a counselor actually said, "You were raped and you were assaulted," for me to go, "Oh, okay, that makes sense as to why I'm acting the way I am." But I still felt very alone and didn't really do anything about it. And when I was working in the congressman's office, I had about 4 women come to me needing help with their MST claims. And I'm like, "What's this MST? What is this?" And they told me, and I'm like, "We didn't have that when I was in. I just, we didn't talk about it. You just got in trouble or didn't get in trouble and didn't get counseling or anything else." And it triggered a lot of things for me. I was having panic attacks. I was angry. All these things were going through my mind. And I finally went into my boss's office, a female, and I said, "Danielle, I think I've got a problem." And I said, "I'm not dealing with it well." And I told her everything that happened to me. And I said, "These cases are really, they're kicking my ass. I don't know what to do about it." And she said, "Do you want me to take them off of your plate?" And I said, "No, no, I'm finishing these. These women deserve this help. My sisters deserve this help." And I kept going home every night and going, "People like this shouldn't be happening in our military. We're family, we're brothers, we're sisters. You know what?" And I was researching everything, and I had worked for a nonprofit previously, so I had a lot of connections. And I called one of the gentlemen that I worked with, and I said, "I have to tell you something, and I want to know if you can help me." And I told him my story, and he started crying, and he said, "Oh, Shannon," he goes, "I have to give you something." And I said, "Okay, what?" He goes, "I'm going to give you a program I wrote, and I think you should start a nonprofit." And I said, "Well, that's what I wanted to do. I want to start a nonprofit." Well, to run a nonprofit, you can't work for a congressional member. So that made that decision easy. I quit, knowing I wasn't going to have any income, didn't care. So I took the program he wrote, which has been life changing for me, and created Shield of Sisters. And Shield of Sisters is really my answer to what I never got. It's my healing and what I would have wanted when I was going through everything that happened to me. So we host retreats, 3-day retreats at Airbnbs with a small group of women who have all been assaulted, harassed, you name it, while they served. And we take them through what we call a restoration process. It's a lot of metaphorical exercises. I think professionals would call it cognitive behavioral therapy is basically what we do. And from the minute they get there, we take care of everything for them. We get their suitcase out of their car. If they need a drink, it's there. Like, we make them feel like they are worthy of being treated in a way that is nothing short of, "You're a princess, you're a queen, you deserve to be treated this way after your betrayal and after someone took something so significant from you." And so they do the retreat, and then they leave with what we call a battle angel, which is peer-to-peer support. They have access to a life coach that helps them work through goals. And then we help them find other resources if they need them. Because, like, for me, my VA doesn't do eating disorders. And I'll tell you, I binge eat. 3 or 4 weeks ago, even if I was doing this podcast, I'd probably go afterwards and get a couple Big Macs and eat them. Because that was just my way of dealing with things. I felt if I got really fat, no one would look at me and no one would assault me again because, "Ooh, she's fat and ugly." And so the VA doesn't work on that with me. We have another nonprofit we work with that we refer them to. And so we try as much as we can to use other resources like nonprofits instead of the VA and the military, because we just feel like the betrayal was so huge that other resources are probably more beneficial. Some of our ladies go to the VA, good for them if it works, but we really try and make it as holistic and civilian as possible, knowing that, we don't trust anybody who's not a veteran and not gone through what we've gone through. So we try and find those nonprofits that are similarly aligned as us. But that's how Shield of Sisters came about, just really needing a way to help others not feel alone like I did.
I love that holistic approach because we need to start thinking and looking, and in any aspect, right, of that whole person. Because even with healthcare, you have to look at the person as a holistic approach. And I love that your organization does that. Even if you don't or can't do something in your organization, you partner with someone who can. You mentioned how the VA doesn't address your binge eating. Like, how does the military and VA, how are they not addressing the sexual assault in the military adequately?
Yeah, I'll start with the VA because that's what I deal with the most because the military genuinely screwed me over. There are some VAs that do a lot of good. They try as hard as they can. They have women's centers. There's, women who will meet you at the door and walk you to the clinic so you don't ever have to be around the men. And I think that's important. My VA does not do eating disorders. They're overbooked. It takes a lot to get in. And I think that's what a lot of us are seeing is you're having a crisis. Well, in 3 to 4 months, we can get you into the psych department. And in the meantime, well, matter of fact, that happened to me. They assigned me to a interim practicum intern and he talked to me about setting goals daily. I'm like, I am truly suicidal right now. And you want to talk to me about setting goals? Like, come on. I don't care about the dishes. I don't care if I get out of my bed today and go for a walk. I want someone to tell me, "Hey, this is what's going on and let's fix it." And I think a lot of us deal with things like that. And so you tell me I have to wait. I'm in crisis. And so they look for other resources. And a lot of them won't use the VA because of that betrayal. Like, you betrayed me. And a lot of people you're hiring are the people who hurt us, are the people who, just got smacked on the hand, got to be promoted in the military, and now they're working at the VA. And so, as much as I want to give the VA kudos because I do think some of them really try, they're just not seeing the holistic approach and not realizing that there are so many of us who just don't trust them and don't offer the services we need when we need them. And I think it's hard to see because we're supposed to be taken care of. Those moral injuries that we get in the military are so overlooked for the physical injuries that are more visible.
You mentioned the VA and how it takes so long to get an appointment. There was a situation, and it wasn't even for me. It was for, I wanted more information so I could help someone. But I went to mental health and I requested some information, and they're like, okay, we'll route it up or whatever. And at this point, they called me over a year after that. And at this point, I was out of the military. My husband is still in. So we moved from Vegas to California. And then they called me and asked if I still wanted information. And I was like, what if I was suicidal? Like, what if I was to the point where I genuinely needed help, or even if I wasn't to the point where I had a gun in my hand, but I was contemplating it and I was on the edge, like, then what? And that's what really, for me, was very eye opening about the VA because, and especially with mental health, like, the military and the VA, they're like, your mental health is health, and we're trying to take away this taboo. But yet, there's so many people that need this help, and yet you don't have the resources. You're not helping. I mean, you're having people come from deployed locations, and you have 2 weeks R&R. 2 weeks. You're not even talking about the trauma that you saw or working through any of that.
Mhm.
You're trying to readjust, quote, quote, to going from combat to civilian, but not talking about anything else. And so for me, that was like very eye opening because there's so many people that do need that help right away, and we don't have the resources, and we just keep getting pushed back because you're right. It's always the physical that trumps the mental.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the VA doesn't even look at moral injury as a problem. It's not even talked about. And that's something I'm pushing right now because moral injury is a significant impact on PTSD. It's a significant impact in the military sexual trauma world, which I'm going to back up real quick and tell you, I hate MST. We always like to put these little ribbons around stuff and make it more palatable. And for me, that's the military's answer to making rape palatable. Because when I talk to people and say, I'm a survivor of MST, that's good. Like, do you even know what it means? I was raped by someone with HIV. That is a moral injury. Women being held at gunpoint, being raped. That is a moral injury and a physical injury. Women being raped in the line of training in case they're ever captured as prisoner of war is a moral injury. And the VA doesn't look at it. It's not even in a rating scheme for disability. And even our soldiers who are, combat related PTSD and have other issues from combat, they're suffering moral injury just as much because, maybe they were told to go do something and it went against what they believe. And so, the VA and the military forget that aspect as well. As the invisible injuries are the ones that are contributing to the 22 a day significantly. So we're changing the narrative. MST is not a verb. We're saying, call it what it is. It is rape. It is assault. It is harassment. There's a 19-year-old that made the news in England. They have an extremely big MST problem there, a sexual assault problem there. Her boss was harassing her to the point where she killed herself because she did not want to go to work the next day. And so, it just amazes me the number of, it's not just our military, and that it amazes me, we're supposed to be these big fierce warriors and protect people, and we're not being protected.
Because I'm a true crime like junkie. Well, I was watching a documentary yesterday. It was like the Long Island Killer, whatever. It just came out on Netflix. Anyway, we were watching it, and they were prostitutes or escorts or whatever. And the mom said, and I remember she was advocating, if it wasn't a prostitute, if we didn't label her a prostitute, like we would get more news coverage. If we said that she was a mother, she was a daughter, she was a sister, it would get more news coverage than saying that she was a escort. So like she kept pushing, like, no, she's more than that. She's this, and this. And eventually they found like all of these other bodies and it launched this big thing. But it kind of made me think of what you were saying, like words matter. And you're right, like just kind of lumping everything together. People think of sexual trauma or military sexual trauma like, okay, she probably deserved it or she was probably asking for that. I can't tell you how many times that I'm looking at comments on social media and it's always guys. And it was like, oh, she was probably on her knee. That's why she earned it. Or she probably dressed this way. Or she was probably blah, 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 blah. It was always blaming the woman for what happened to her.
Yeah, that's what you get for joining the males club. What I'll never forget. One of the first things my drill instructor said to us, he was like, "Are you going to be a mattress or are you going to be a bitch?" And I was like, "What?" And keep in mind, the day I got to boot camp, tail hook broke. And you might be too young to know about tail hook. I'm not sure. Some of your listeners might know. It was the biggest sexual harassment, sexual assault scandal in the military's history. All of the pilots, Navy pilots, would take their secretaries to the conventions and the conferences in Vegas and having all these affairs and crazy stuff going on. So literally every day they would come in and erase names off the board on the chain of command. And we're talking like, Secretary of the Navy, all the way down. And so we're being told sexual harassment is a very bad thing. And he's saying, are you going to be a bitch or you're going to be a mattress? And funnily enough, the person who taught us sexual harassment in the Navy was a Navy SEAL. He was in his dress whites, and all the girls had been in boot camp for however many weeks, and we're 18, 19, and we're like, he could sexually harass us. The military's look on sexual harassment, or was it really harassment, or did he just smack her on the butt, or did he wink at her, tell her, oh, you look nice today? Sometimes that can wear on you. And if any of your listeners are still active or wherever you work and that's happening, that is assault. It is harassment. If it's uncomfortable for you, speak up. It just blows my mind how much we still have to go as women, in this world, because we're still treated like objects a lot. Mm-hmm. And I'm not a man hater. I love men. Let me be very clear. This isn't a Me Too movement. This is a
human decency.
Yeah. And women who join the military to protect this country, come on now. We deserve way more than what is going on.
Yeah, I agree. You also kind of mentioned that there was like an increase in assaults. Like, why do you think that is?
Our recruiting standards. We need it. We've been in a 20-year war. People weren't joining as quickly as we needed them. So we changed our recruiting standards. And we're letting anybody in the military that wants to join. And I think some of the assaults are increasing because women are actually standing up and reporting. I think the fact that we don't punish enough, the assaulter gets to, oh, maybe we'll take his rank, or he can retire at his rank, or we'll move her out of the unit so it won't be a problem anymore. Well, we can get away with it. So I think those are a lot of the reasons why assaults are going up. And right now, I mean, they're changing everything constantly on how we're dealing with sexual assault in the military, and they're erasing women off of everything. So we're just objects, and do whatever you want with them.
You said something that kind of like re-brought up something that happened in my military experience. So there was this guy, he never did it to me, and probably because I have like a resting bitch face and people tend to like not fuck with me, but he was a master sergeant. How we were in the building, it was kind of like an L shaped or whatever. So he was training someone, he was the lead imagery analyst, but he had his dick out in uniform on the ops floor while teaching some of these airmen. And so it never happened to me, but a lot of the women did come up to me because I was a staff sergeant at the time. And they're 1 stripe, 2 stripe, 3 stripes. And they were saying, like, this is happening, this is happening. And all they did was move him to a different unit. And I think maybe take a stripe away because he was so close to retirement. And he said that he didn't know his dick was out. And I was like, first off, if you're in uniform, those buttons, like, you're going to get some airflow on your thing. For me, it was very hard to comprehend his logic behind it, but kind of what you were saying, it made people obviously uncomfortable because like his dick is showing. He's like a superior, he's a trainer. And then all they did was just move him to a different unit and take a stripe away because he was so close to retirement. And I think maybe his wife worked on base too or something like that. I don't know all of it, but I just know that he was moved to a different unit after that whole situation.
That I would like to say I'm shocked. I have women call me every day and tell me stories. And, at some point during the day, I kind of go, okay, if I hear one more story, I'm just like, I need a break. But when I hear things like that, my anger level just soars because there's no way in hell he did not know he was showing his junk. Like, no way in hell. Those uniforms don't just, the little zipper comes down or the little button just fall,
That's what I'm saying.
and just to get moved, like, and that's why we have a problem. Because now he's gotten away with that. What's his next step? Because he's only going to get worse. That's how the psychology of a perpetrator works. Like, oh, I got away with this, so let's take it up another notch. So what is he doing now? Raping women, assaulting, whatever. And he's going to get away with it. Ooh.
And I do want to caveat on your thing that where you say you're not a man hater. Like, I understand, yes, we're talking about a lot of men perpetrators. Yes, there are women that also do the same
Yes.
thing. So I do just want to make sure that people who are listening, we're not just trying to target the men. It does tend to be a little bit more heavier on the percentage of male versus female, but yes, men are victims of this as well. So my question to you is, with Shields of Sisters, does men ever come to you?
We do. And we're not in the place yet, especially funding wise, where we can bring male retreats to our circle. I can tell you, and this is breaking news, we've now created Shield of Brothers. And as soon as we can work on the funding and everything, we'll bring that on. The thing, for men, yes, it's 1 in 50, but there's a lot more men in the military than women. And that number is actually growing. And women do rape men. It does happen, in this day and age with all of the different sexual ideations. I'm not going to go into that. Men rape men, women rape women, vice versa, all that. And we all need help. We're all survivors. I hate the word victim, but we're all victims of this. And so we're going to have one male retreat this year. We're trying it out, seeing what actually happens, because I'll tell you, we host these retreats and we'll have 10 women sign up and 6 will show up because of the anxiety, because of the emotions, I just can't walk out of the room. I can't walk out of the house today. I can't walk out of the house. So what we've started doing is actually assigning a past participant to the new cohort and having them talk to them all the way through up until they get to the retreat. And then that person is at the retreat, because that way they know someone. They are assured that they're not going to be alone. So we're a little part of the only reason we're leery of bringing on male retreats right now is, it costs money and they have a whole different stigma. As hard as it is for us women, the masculinity that is taken away, the mental, you've used the word, so I'm going to, the mental mind fuck they must go through. Being raped as a man has to be significant. and my heart breaks for them. One of the things I've heard from our sisters is the guys have a lot of resources. They get all the attention, they get all the money, they get all blah blah blah, but they still want to help the survivors from being assaulted in the military. They just don't want it taken away from them. So we're trying to figure out the best way to roll it out. Happy to partner with somebody if you know a good way to do it, but there as few MST programs as there are out there for women. There's none for men.
And I love
And
that you're taking the initiative for that.
it took me a while. I always said there will never be a man in my organization. Our chairman of our board is now a man, and his wife is one of the participants, and he's so supportive of her. He is an amputee. He served. He's a Purple Heart recipient. He's an amazing man. So supportive of Shield of Sisters, and I need women to know that not all men are bad. And vice versa, I need our brothers who have been assaulted to know that not all women are bad. So it's been a process. We'll say I've about halfway there. So the board directed me last night to create Shield of Brothers, so I did, and we're gonna see what happens with it.
I love that because it is not even just your own barriers to kind of overcome those obstacles, but you're also working on yourself so you can provide that help to those men. And I know with my husband, he doesn't do talk therapy. Went to Afghanistan with someone and they obviously experienced the same things like in front of them, but how my husband processed it and how this other guy processed it are like two completely different things. And so if a male encountered the sexual trauma, you don't know how he's going to perceive it. Maybe he's like, it is what it is. I'm just going to keep on trucking. Like, I don't want anyone to know. And then the other one might just genuinely really need help. So it's great that you're working to getting towards it. I know
Yeah,
it's a lot. I
it
know.
is. It is. And I think when I first said no man will ever cross our boundary, I was just in a different place. I was angry. I was still working on me. And the 3 years I've been doing this has been such a healing process. It is, we just had our first annual conference and I'm sitting there and I'm looking around and I'm like, holy crap. Everybody told me 90% of nonprofits fail. And here I am. Like, here I am. I'll tell you a story about it because it's why I wake up every day. I was in the elevator. It was the end of the night of the conference, and I was exhausted, just mentally and emotionally just dead. I was tired. I wanted to go to bed. It was midnight. And I get on the elevator, and there's a girl standing there, and she goes, "Oh my God, it's you." And I'm like, "Oh my God, it's me. I'm not a celebrity." I'm like looking around going, "Who are you looking for?" And she's like, "I have to tell you something." And she stopped the elevator, and I was like, "Great, we're going to get in trouble for this." And I'm like, "Okay, what's going on?" And she said, Friday afternoon before the retreat or before the conference, I had a handful of pills and I was ready to swallow them. And she said, but I remembered I paid for my hotel and the conference and I didn't really have a lot of money, but I paid for it. So I didn't want to waste it. So I put the pills in my pocket and I came to the retreat, to the conference. And she said, I no longer want to die. And I hope that every day, because if I help one person put those pills in their pocket and decide they never want to do it again, then I've done my job. Sorry. I know, I'm sorry. And then another story, she's like, well, I burn my thighs because I take a lighter and burn my thighs because I'm tired of feeling emotional pain. So the physical pain is worth it. In every story I hear, every morning when I wake up and go, oh, I just don't want to be emotional today. I think of those stories and what we're giving back at Shield of Sisters is their lives before the trauma that happened to them, and understanding that they don't have to live in that anymore, and that they can be whole, and that what the military took from them and the way they were betrayed isn't the way they deserve to live the rest of their lives. So I get up and, get my cup of coffee and keep doing it because every life is important. And the women we serve, they just have my heart. And every single one of them have my personal number. They know they can call me anytime. And, that's why we exist. And that's why I'm okay at some point helping our brothers, because God forbid I didn't talk to someone on the elevator and the next day they took their life. That would weigh on me heavily. So getting to the point where I don't care if you're a man or a woman, if you've been assaulted, you deserve so much. My team makes fun of me. They say I have a 6 time a day quota on crying, and I'm about 18 today. Sorry.
Don't be sorry. It's raw. It's real. Those are real
Yeah,
emotions, and people need to experience those. And so we're in a society where people think crying is a sign of weakness, but it's not. It's a sign of strength. It's a sign of
yeah,
healing and realizing, okay, let me just get through this emotion and then come out stronger on the other
yeah,
end.
yeah. I have become such a badass. Let me tell you, I used to be like this little, oh, it's okay. Oh, this is not okay. This is not okay. And the more we talk, it's kind of like the suicide stigma. I'm at the point where the more we call it rape, the more we talk about military sexual trauma, the stigma is going to go away. So people, and they call it what it is. And we start punishing the people who are doing this to our service members. That's where I'm at. So make fun of me for my 6 time a day cries. It's what I do. Then I go get a piece of chocolate and go, okay, serotonin, come on.
I also do the same thing, but sometimes with wine instead.
Girlfriend, like, red wine and chocolate, that's my night because
They're a
I
match made in
read a
heaven.
report that says dark chocolate's good for you and red wine is too because the Italians drink it and look at how amazing they are. So,
That's fair. That's fair. So let's get a little political.
okay.
So I know with the political climate, we are not talking about military sexual trauma inside the military. What are your thoughts on that? And how can the military, or how can we fix that problem of assault in the military if we can't talk about it?
I was talking to a reporter the other day, and a lot of it's off record because I don't want to damage Shield of Sisters, but I'm angry. Women are being erased off of military pages. They're changing everything under the guise of DEI. Well, let's just get this straight. MST is not DEI. Rape does not discriminate. Rank, color, gender, sexual identifications, anything is not. It is the most undiscriminated. Anybody can be raped. So taking the programs away under the guise of DEI is like one of the most insulting things you can do to anyone. Erasing women, erasing people out of military programs under the whole DEI window umbrella is adding to the betrayal. And I told the reporter, I said, it's actually doing me a favor because it's going to make me more relevant at Shield of Sisters. We're going to be more relevant than ever, and I'm going to be in your face more than ever. But those programs are still needed. Women and men who are assaulted need to know that they can go to their command and say, I was just raped. I'm being harassed to the point where I want to die. And if you can't do something about it because you're worried about your DEI and getting in trouble, there's a fucking problem. So politically, I'm more conservative, like a lot of military is. It's like a whole new betrayal, both by our commander in chief, our secretary of defense, and leaders who aren't standing up and saying, this is wrong. This isn't DEI. They say they're going to a more prevention model in like the SARC and SHARP programs. What you've been doing to prevent hasn't been working now. So what do you think just changing the program is going to do to help? So yeah, I'm angry. Yeah, I get calls every day. And they're like, well, what do you think? Are you worried? I'm like, yeah, I'm worried. I'm worried. Because if you're not going to stop it, you're not going to have those programs there. It's a free for all. So the numbers are going to go up. And what are you going to do to help them? Like you say, you're going to have these programs and it's really not gone away. We just don't know what we're doing yet. We all know we get a plan of the day. That's what they call it in the Navy. If you're not giving us your plan of the day and telling us why this has gone away and what you're going to put in place for it, how do we trust you as our commander? It's just another level of that moral injury that goes with sexual assault and harassment. I'm going to call them all on the carpet. If it hurts me funding wise, so be it. I've been limping along this long. I can do it for more years. They need to start listening to people like me, to other survivors, and go, what did you need? What happened to you and how can we fix it? Quit listening to all these PhDs and we know how to fix this, because you don't. Because every survivor is different. I have a survivor who can't go to a public bathroom because she was assaulted in a bathroom. I have a survivor who can't sleep in the dark because they put her in a Connex under the guise of training and raped her daily and left her in the dark. So quit talking to your psychologist and your political appointees and all of these people and listen to the people it happened to. and fix your SARC and your SHARP and your whatever initials you want to call it, and actually make a program that works. Otherwise, people like me are going to be the ones fixing it. But after it's already happened and we're now in restoration mode and suicide prevention mode instead of preventing the assaults in the first place. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah. When I was in some of the preventative programs, there was one called Green Light, Red Light. It was the dumbest, dumb. I can't even say it was the dumbest sexual assault prevention program I have ever fucking heard. And I was like, how is this going to prevent anything? And they spent so much money on it too. It was ridiculous. I was like, okay. They keep putting these programs into place thinking that it's going to work. I don't even know who's the expert that comes out with some of these because I'm like, it clearly is not very well thought out.
No.
We do have to create something that is better. And I do think talking to survivors like you, because obviously not all survivors do want to talk, but the ones that are willing to be that voice, like yourself and your organization, consult them. Why don't you? It's like, let's talk sports. Like, you're not gonna go to a head coach of a basketball team to coach a football team.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, why don't you go to someone who has played football or who has a little bit of ins with football to coach football? And that's how we need to start kind of approaching some
Yeah.
of these programs, because I'm telling you, like, again, I can't even get over this red light, gray light. I've been out for like 8 years and I'm still talking about how dumb this program was. And then, also commented about the whole DEI. We just got done talking about how men could also be victims.
Mm-hmm.
So it boggles my mind how it is considered DEI. Anyone could essentially get raped, assaulted, harassed. But is it because it's generally women that that's why they consider it DEI? Like, get your heads out of your asses
Mm-hmm.
and let's be real about it. Like, if you want to say, oh, well, women this, women this, women this, well, why don't you kind of take a step back and be like, oh, well, this could potentially happen to men as well, and realize that it could happen to anyone. And it is a situation and a problem that should be addressed
Yeah.
in every organization, in every aspect.
Yeah. And the whole DEI thing is about inclusion. I didn't want to be included in this club. No, nobody goes, "Hey, could you rape me today? Because I want to deal with this the rest of my life. I want to be included. Please treat me equally. Since you raped my girlfriend, could you rape me?" I mean, that's what DEI is. Equity and inclusion. Nobody wants to be included in this. Nobody. And so it's absolutely insulting to call it a DEI program. Insulting. Yeah.
When they started implementing not training military sexual trauma, have you seen an increase of people reaching out to Shield of Sisters?
Yeah. We get emails and calls and social media messages. I mean, some just out of fear they haven't been assaulted, but they're like, what do we do if we are, now that like it's free game? And I don't want anybody to think it's free game, because I don't think it is, but just the way they're doing it kind of makes it feel that way. But yeah, we're definitely seeing an increase. We've got a waiting list for retreats. We're just working as fast as we can, bringing on more staff. Like I said, we're all volunteer right now, but we're working as hard as we can to reach every woman who calls us.
So how can someone essentially get involved with Shield of Sisters, and how to essentially help fund some of these retreats or resources and all the things that you guys are doing?
Well, our website is very amazing. I give a shout out to Kim. It's www.shieldofsisters.com. There's a donation page. My number is all over it. My email is shannon@shieldofsisters.com. My phone number is 608-344-0210. We're recruiting board members right now. We're recruiting staff contingent on funding. If you're a survivor and you want to come to a retreat, there's an application on our website. If you just need to talk, call me. We've got an MST hotline now because of the whole 988 issue. So it's 833 SOS MST0. Don't ask me the numbers. I don't know them off the top of my head. And it's manned 24 hours a day. And, it's our answer to some of the programs going away, but we answer it all the time. And well, even if you were just assaulted and want someone to go to your command with you or your hospital or whatever you need, we're there. I'll get on a plane today. I don't care. I'll put it on my own credit card. That's how we feel.
I love that you have a hotline. Like, I don't know why that wasn't even a thing like years ago.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about that, because obviously that you have the suicide hotline. What is the MST hotline?
Well, part of it has to do with when I first started the program, I wanted to be able to have a battle angel at every installation, kind of like a casualty assistance officer. You're assaulted, you don't know what to do next, call the hotline. And when I brought Kayla on, Kayla's my badass, I love her. She came to me, she goes, I want to kind of do the battle angels a little different. I want them to be able to call us if they've just been assaulted or their command is giving them shit, and I want to get on the plane and go help them. And I was like, this is what I wanted from the very beginning. And she goes, we need a phone number. And I was like, okay. So I created a hotline. And so it's not just for if you've just been assaulted. It's, let's say you're feeling suicidal and you want to talk to somebody and none of your friends are picking up. Call us. We'll talk 24/7. We don't care. So it's both an MST, suicide, you just need a friend kind of thing. And it's really important to me. The podcast I was on just before I'm doing this one. They were talking about how much 8 minutes can change someone's life. And so often we're just so busy that we forget to pick up that phone call or answer that text. And a lot of times for military, our suicide ideations and like reach outs are very different. They're not like giving your Xbox away. It's like, hey, how are you? And you haven't heard from them for a while. My mind says, something's not right. So just that 8 minutes can change someone's life. And so our hotline answers that.
I love that. That is actually really amazing. You also have a podcast. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
The podcast is survivor stories, how they've overcome what happened to them. It's called Invisible No More. We're on all the platforms. Every other Thursday we do a new session, and it's me just talking. We don't have a program per se. We just talk, and it's just like girlfriend chat. And we get real, and we talk about how what we're going through impacts our families, how it impacts day-to-day life, and how to thrive afterwards. And so it's been really interesting to hear so many stories, and we're in like 15 countries and we've got like 15 episodes. So it works.
That's awesome. I
Yeah.
love all the work that you're doing, just with your organization, your retreat, even with just the podcast, letting people be able to hear other stories so they don't feel alone. You really are doing some amazing work. And I'm so glad to have you today.
I'm so honored. Thank you. I love the title Women Serve Too, because, with everything we're being erased right now, we're still here. We're not going anywhere. So keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So what is one major thing that you want the listeners to take away with?
You're not alone. There's help out there, and we're here.